Live from the 607, it is the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, where we're talking sports locally and nationally. Why don't you join in the conversation with the hashtag ODPH? Here we go. And welcome to another edition of the ODPH. I'm your host, Ken M. Sitting across me this week is not Padawan J. Unfortunately, couldn't make it to the show this week. It's our favorite coach, Coach Duffy.
What is going on, Ken? I'm excited to be here today.
Dude, I am so amped for this show.
Let's go.
You are not even ready to join in, but we want you to on the social media. Hashtag it up, ODPH, because we want to talk with you. Obviously, we're going to talk some football, but you know we're going to go UFC heavy in the second segment, so stay tuned for that. But first and foremost, we got to talk about those locks and leaps. I have to say, my lock definitely showed up. Drew Brees made some history for it. The Saints definitely took it to the Washington Redskins 43-19 on Monday night.
That was crazy. The Redskins looked so good all year long. I mean, I guess I should say decent, for most of the year defensively, and then all of a sudden New Orleans just comes and spanks them.
The thing about it is New Orleans is always just has this mystique at home. Like, we talk about the Packers with Lambeau Field, and we talk about the Patriots at Foxborough, but if you are playing the Saints in the Superdome, it is almost impossible to beat them.
Yeah, I mean, their home field advantage is probably one of the best in the NFL right now, especially when you're talking about going into a dome and having to play in that setting, especially when you're talking about Drew Brees about to approach the record. So there's a lot of, that energy being brought with him approaching the record. So, I mean, full home field advantage.
And the one thing, too, is we've been hearing a lot about Kansas City and Los Angeles. The Saints are quietly flying under the radar, being at 4-1 right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I watched the Giants when they played the Giants, and I saw a team that isn't necessarily the same Saints team from years past. Defensively, obviously, there's probably holes like there always is with New Orleans, but their run game, especially now with Mark Ingram back, is very, very good. Mm-hmm. And Kamara obviously is a beast. So
yeah, I mean, they're so well-rounded on the offensive side of the ball. It's just if their defense can slow the opposing teams down, they're going to just run through their games.
Yeah, I mean, the only team that I would say when you're talking about those two teams that you really have to worry about a foot race is obviously Kansas City. Mm-hmm. The Rams can put up points, yes, but I really think that Kansas City, with the way that offense can fire, they can, with Mahomes just throwing a rocket 80 yards to Tyreek Hill, can easily score a quick point, which is similar to what New Orleans can do. So, they would go back and forth. And obviously the Rams, yeah, they're very, very good.
They're very, very good, but the Saints have definitely made their presence felt, and especially for Drew Brees, I mean, breaking Peyton Manning's all-time passing yards record. I mean, truly astonishing, and he's still got, a full slate of games to go.
He's still got almost 12 weeks left here.
And it's just crazy to think, too, when he left San Diego, if he stayed there at the time, I mean, imagine how many championships they might have had, or the fact that he was going to choose between New Orleans and Miami.
Yeah.
And Miami passed on him because they were worried about
his shoulder.
Arm. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's crazy to think of just how, destinies of each franchise would have gone.
Yeah, and then you talk about the fact that Miami now is on, probably their fourth or fifth quarterback since that, free agency time period at least, with Tannehill, and obviously he's had some ups and downs, but just imagine what they could have had with Drew Brees there. You talk about free agents wanting to come play there too in Miami, with having a quarterback there. Their whole dynasty could have been rewritten there.
And as a Bills fan, I'm so grateful.
You've got to be happy about that
every day that he did not wind up in Miami. Otherwise, we would be talking about maybe a whole other dynasty other than the Patriots.
And I mean, but that Peyton Manning thing, I don't know if you saw it with him giving the tip of the cap there while he was cutting his tomatoes.
Yes.
Very funny. Peyton still got it,
Oh, comedic timing has not taken a step back.
Do I still have the touchdown record? Okay, good. Oh, he's about to beat that too? Oh, that was great.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he's got such a unique comic timing that is just he has got such a bright future outside of football, where he wants to go.
Yeah, I mean, if he ever wanted to do one of the pre-shows, on ESPN or CBS or Fox, I mean, they should absolutely clear a chair for that man to come on there because he'd be great.
I think that's just if he wants to.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants to do commentary.
Sure. No, I don't think he does either, but if he did...
Oh, my God.
I'm not even talking commentary. I'm talking pre-show.
Yeah,
I think pre-show would be perfect for him.
He should have his own, hour on his show and just let him talk about football.
Yeah.
We tune in. But nevertheless, New Orleans definitely made a statement on Monday night. Drew Brees throwing for 363 yards and 3 touchdowns. When he's clicking, he is clicking, and they're a scary team to beat. And then my leap, I took Seattle. They showed up.
They did.
They definitely showed up, but the Rams just eked out a win, beating the Seahawks 33-31. And, I mean, what else can you really say about the Rams? They got Gurley going for 77 yards but 3 touchdowns.
And McVay with that gutsy call on that fourth down, going for it with that quarterback sneak. What a play call.
I'm telling you what, he is making his legacy known in Los Angeles. He is just reinvented that whole franchise. And just the play calling, you're just seeing that they're not afraid to take chances. And this is giving a young team confidence that this is going to pay off in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, they come out with a punt unit, you know, and then obviously Seattle calls the timeout because you want to save as much clock as you can, especially under the 2-minute warning there. And then he sends the offense back out, and I'm sitting here like watching the game like, oh my God, this is gutsy. This is. I mean, they're on the 46. I mean, this is gutsy. This is one play away from Russell, Wilson scoring a game-winning touchdown right now, and you're going to go for it.
Yeah.
After just watching the Giants game, mind you, like.
Yeah, this is just one of those riverboat gambles that just you sitting there as a fan, you gotta be like, if he messes this up, he'll never hear the end of it. But if he nails it, I mean, this is like a legendary call right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And going forward, I mean, the Rams are rolling right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to play them at all.
They're looking scary, both sides of the ball.
Both defensively, especially. This was the first game defensively where they really showed, a chip in the armor. But even for the offense now to come back and step up and play the way that they did.
Yeah, it's just when you have both sides of the ball clicking like they do, I mean, that's just a scary thing moving forward for any team to be facing.
Especially in a weak NFC West.
Which they should just completely run away with. I mean, the number 1 seed is wide open right now.
Oh, it's easy for them to grab.
Coach, how was your locks and leaps this week?
I will say that I had a pretty solid week with my locks and my leaps. My lock, I went with the Chargers. Obviously, another Los Angeles team right now that's playing very, very well.
The Chargers, I tell you, when they get clicking, they are scary to face. And they are. I mean, when Rivers gets going, he's throwing for 339 yards, 2 touchdowns. Gordon got the ball rolling, 58 yards, but 1 touchdown still. When those guys are clicking, they're tough to beat. And the Chargers, formerly from San Diego, but they are now currently residing in L.A., when they get going, I mean, they're just one of the more polarizing teams because they have so much potential. They should be up there with the Rams and the Chiefs of the echelon of the NFL. But sometimes they just are inconsistent, and it's weird to watch.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely a very inconsistent team when, you're talking about, especially the schedule that they have. I mean, they have another East Coast travel 1:00 game, which is always tough for West Coast teams to have. When they play at home, I think they're a much, much better team.
I agree.
Because I think even though the crowd in LA, obviously there's always the talks of you can't draw a crowd in LA for football and nobody wants to take the time, but they play very well at home, and especially against the Oakland team that's down on their luck right now, to decimate them by 16 just goes to show that you can win games.
This Oakland team, like I say, I feel so bad for Raider fans right now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This is just wild because Khalil Mack is gone, and I mean, honestly, you can definitely see how the defense is night and day.
Yeah,
without him there.
And it's not even just the defense, the offense now with Gruden coming in and running this West Coast scheme where he's got he's got vertical passing type offense. I mean, these guys last year ran go routes, probably I want to say 67, 68% of the time, and now they're running slants.
Yeah.
And, obviously I think Derek Carr is a very good quarterback, and I know Gruden, probably knows a little bit more than me, but right now he's not using Derek Carr to his strengths.
No, this team just looks, it looks lost out there.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to describe it, and they shouldn't be with the amount of talent they got. And Gruden is an offensive-minded coach.
And again, to go for it on a goal line stand and not give the ball to Marshawn Lynch. I understand the idea of using him as a decoy in that situation, but the guy's nickname is Beast Mode.
Yes, if you have him on the goal line, you give him the ball.
Give him the ball.
I mean, why is there a second thought?
Unless you have already had 3 goal line stands where you've gotten stuffed and you're on 4th down and you need to get the touchdown, sure, I guess I understand having to throw it one time. But my God, if it's your first goal line stand and you're on the goal line, give him the ball.
Yeah, this should have been such a no-brainer, but teams just don't get it, and I don't understand why. Because this is what costs you coaching jobs.
It's just at the end of the day, it's them outsmarting themselves.
Yeah, and it's like the element of surprise. Yeah, it's there, but come on. I mean, if you have the best, arguably one of the best running backs in the league, even in his later years here, you still give him the ball.
I mean, he hasn't let up yet.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still running the ball like Marshawn Lynch of 5 years ago.
Yeah, so why would you not give him the ball? I mean, what, to catch the team off guard? They were waiting.
No, it's them. It's just the coach outthinking himself. He's out strategizing himself, and at the end of the day, they walk right into a trap.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't even know where to go from there.
I'm going to go to my leap after there, and I'm going to go that the Vikings got a huge win on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles. Big time win.
Huge win. And I would say, I don't want to say it was a desperation win, but with Minnesota especially coming off the bad loss to Buffalo, they needed this one.
And the bad loss against the Rams, too. I mean, their backs were up against the wall, especially with how well Green Bay has played as of late. And Chicago's on the rise, so Minnesota needed a win.
Yes, and this one was definitely well needed and definitely earned. I mean, this was no cakewalk in the park by any means. But Kirk Cousins definitely had a great game, throwing for over 300 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, probably played one of his better games that he's had all year.
Yeah, and he played solid. And, I mean, they did not get, I don't want to say they panicked at any point. They stayed pretty calm, especially when Philly was coming back in the second half. I mean, Carson Wentz got the ball rolling, and once you almost kind of wonder if they were going to lose that game, because when Wentz got going, the whole dynamic of that team shifted.
Well, and defensively, too, they haven't been consistent all year, and I'm sure probably a lot of Vikings fans probably feel like the defense got left behind in that loss in Philly last year, that they haven't been able to recover. Mm-hmm. But now, after this game, maybe they'll start to get some momentum going defensively. And, I mean, this is a game, too, without Delvin Cook. So they still haven't even been clicking on all full cylinders yet, because they haven't had everybody in yet.
Yeah, once they get him back, you'll see a totally different dynamic to that offense.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And they need that, because if you're trying to get Cousins to win in a shootout with somebody, that's tough to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to necessarily put the game in his hands just yet.
Right, but I will say this, though. For going over there, he's adapted very quickly to their system, and it's been something that they just have been playing inconsistent.
No, it helps when you have veteran wide receivers too, especially a guy like, Rudolph at a tight end position that you can feel safe with, and then they've got obviously great wide receivers in Diggs. And Thielen, yeah. So they've got playmakers that they can get him the ball. It's just they got to make sure that they can protect him long enough to do it, and that's something that they improved a lot on, especially when you talk about the Chargers game or the Rams game, and then this game was night and day offensive line protection.
Yeah, because like we've talked in the past, if you don't have a great offensive line, it doesn't matter who you got behind center.
No, it does not. Trust me,
you're not going to win. Yeah, I wasn't even going to go there with the Giants.
Yeah, and I mean, now you look at Philly and you look at this NFC East. I mean, gross.
Yeah, especially, Philly had a bad loss too with Jay Ajayi being out the year now.
Yeah, that was tremendous. Yeah. That was terrible.
In early word, they're talking with Buffalo about getting Shady McCoy back.
Yeah, well, they're also talking to Detroit about LeGarrette Blount. So
I think they wind up getting McCoy. As much as I hate saying that as a Bills fan, I think that's what happens.
I mean, from a standpoint of as a Giants fan, obviously I don't want them to get anybody. Obviously, I don't know what, if you're Buffalo, what you would want from McCoy right now, just because of the way that he's been playing. Obviously he's a franchise back and he's a dynamic playmaker, but he's also not had the necessarily best year. So if you're Philly, do you make that trade for a first round pick?
I don't know for a first round, but I think Buffalo should ask a lot, though, because they obviously, if you're going to move, your centerpiece of your offense, you got to get a lot in return.
If they trade him for another fifth round pick like they did last year with Ajayi, I will throw something at my television.
Oh, trust me, I'll go bananas on the
yeah, from your end too, right? Yeah,
yeah. If we wind up giving him McCoy and we're basically saying the season's a wash, and we get like a fifth round pick back, I'm sorry.
Still shaking my head at that trade last year.
Yeah, I don't even know where you begin with that one.
So to me, it's just highway robbery. So if they get anything less than a first or a second round pick for McCoy, I'm going to be very, very livid, because obviously the Philadelphia general manager just has some dirt on every GM in the league to pull these off.
Yeah. But kudos to their front office, because they'll find a way to get somebody.
Yeah. Oh, they have to. Obviously Smallwood's shown that he can carry, get some yardage. Maybe a 10 or 15 touch kind of guy, but he's not a J.J. 4th and 1, get a first down. Josh Adams, near and dear to my heart. still rookie, still having to get used to the system. Obviously, he played in the spread last year, which is what Philly runs a lot of, when you talk about the NFL version of the spread. And then, Darren Sproles is in and out of the lineup, so you have to get somebody else to help Smallwood out.
They're going to have to by the trade deadline, and that's fastly approaching.
Yeah, and in the NFL where trades are tough to come by, so moves got to be quick here.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to watch for Philly. Definitely not out of the NFC East race by a long shot, but
nobody is.
Yeah, they got to make some moves. But going quickly around the league, how about those Cleveland Browns?
What's up with that, huh?
Oh,
Baker Mayfield.
He is the truth, folks. He is the truth. His charisma is just lighting a fire under those Browns. And, this is another team that, for yet another game, the Browns went to overtime. So I think that this is something they need to either fix or, they have to find ways to win during regulation.
Well, that's probably their goal.
Easily. No, but this is something that just as a young team, they just got to find ways to close, and they haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
They've gotten lucky a couple times, and obviously beating the Ravens is a huge feather to their cap.
That's huge. That's a big win for them. In division rivals, obviously, the history there and everything. So for Baker to come back and get that win in overtime is great. It's good for him.
Yeah, it's good for him, and it's good for confidence. Now Cleveland has 2 wins for the first time in a few seasons. And for them just moving forward, these are the wins you build off of. But like I said, they just need to find ways to close it in regulation, because when they start doing the dance of overtime, it's going to come back to haunt them. And especially if you're adding more plays onto a game, you have more chance of injury. They just need to find ways to close. They're still a young team, but they're going to get there. But it's just a matter of how soon.
Yeah, I would definitely say in an NFC, North that is...
AFC North.
AFC North, yeah. That is... kind of having some highs and lows right now. Obviously, Pittsburgh possibly at the end of their run here with Roethlisberger already stating that he's going to retire at the end of the year. Then, you got a Ravens team that's kind of in flux right now. They're a good team. Defensively, obviously, they're always going to be stout, but, Flacco has not been, on necessarily the top of his game. So, it's a division that Cleveland, being young, could sneak into, in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I think they're getting built for the future run. Nobody's expecting them to win this year, but if they could get close to the playoffs, not saying to get in, but if they go, 7-9.
I would say anything more than 7-9, 6-10 for them is a winning season. Basically at this point.
Yeah, and not to even take in front the past couple seasons. This is a whole new team, so I'm not even looking past obviously the past couple of years where Cleveland only won 1 game in 2 years.
Yeah, sure. Well, from a fan standpoint, even I would say as a fan of Cleveland, if we went 6-10, I would be thrilled with that as an outcome.
Yeah,
because that just shows promise. Especially if you get a win like this one against Baltimore. You play that great game against Pittsburgh. So obviously you've shown that you played well at home.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens when we go on the road, though.
Yeah, they got a tough test with the Chargers coming up this week. So it'll be fun to watch, though, because I tell you, Browns football is becoming must-watch TV.
East Coast travel, 1 o'clock game.
You never know what could happen.
Yeah.
And how about those Giants? I hate to bring it up, but I know you want to address it.
I'm glad that you did, because I did want to talk about this, and I was worried we were going to miss it. The level of play that the Giants had was probably the best that they've played in the last 2 years, period. Minus that game against Denver on the road there. But this team was great. I thought all facets of the game were there. Odell Beckham with that bonehead decision on that punt.
Yeah.
I was so livid. And it's just like they were saying on commentary. Obviously, you're a down team, so you're trying to make plays. And Odell's trying to get touches and everything. So just get out of the way. Peter, run away. What I'm more upset about is that 4th and 1 or the 3rd and 1 that they didn't review on the McCaffrey run.
They should have.
They should have absolutely been reviewed. Are you kidding me right now? Like, that play, he was short, first off. Secondly, they instantly, as soon as the play was done, it should have been a dead ball, and they should have said, all right, our time, we got to review this. Because that is a change of possession. That is a game-breaking play. And if you're talking about every single possession in the last 2 minutes is reviewable, that's one that should have been reviewed. And good for Cam Newton being heads up and spiking the ball right away.
Yeah.
That's heads up. That's very, very smart.
And they needed to do that. The Giants, this is, I'm not saying the season is lost by any means, but they definitely need to kind of have a team meeting and refocus and just make sure that the outside distractions of why are we, having Twitter beefs with Lil Wayne instead of focusing on the game, get everybody back together and just get focused again.
Yeah,
because this was a great performance otherwise, but just little mistakes cost.
The whole OBJ thing with the interview with ESPN is just crazy. This is such an uncharacteristic thing of a New York football giant, New
agreed.
York Giants football, and it's very difficult to see because the fact that they did pay him so much. And I'm not saying the whole, shut up and be an athlete thing, but what I'm saying is go through the right channels. If you know that it's Tuesday and it's your off day, but when you get requested for interviews that you need to make sure that it gets approved by, the organization, do the right thing. Let it make sure that, the organization knows that you're going to be doing an interview. At the end of the day, they are your employer. Do the right thing, to go behind their back and then to do an interview where the questions are going to be screened and they're going to catch you off guard and they're looking for you to slip. And that's exactly what happened. And at the end of the day, should he be touching the ball more? Sure. But Eli also needs time to throw it to you.
But naming one wide receiver that doesn't want to get the ball every play.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. But going just to close out the segment with it too. You look at the situation with the Steelers and Le'Veon Bell tweeting during games, posting on, IG or whatever. This is becoming distractions. What do you think going on ESPN doing an interview and spouting off about he should get the ball more is going to do in that locker room? Right.
Well, at the end, luckily they do have the leadership that they have. And they do have a 2-time Super Bowl MVP, 2-time Super Bowl winner to be your team captain. So at the end of the day, I think they can lock it down. But it's just something that shouldn't be happening from the Giants organization.
It's going to be something moving forward that they're going to need to correct really quick because otherwise this stuff just snowballs and then look out what it can cost to your team.
Yeah, especially when you're paying a guy that much money,
Yeah, it's crazy to watch. But let us know what you thought of this past week of the NFL action. Hashtag it up, ODPH. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
It's a heartbreak, soul-shaped radio attack. Taking 4 steps forward, no steps back.
Hey, this is Vince the Common Man Ciatoy, local MMA fighter, telling you to keep on listening to the ODPH, the 607's up-and-coming newest podcast.
We knew right where we'd be, floating on the airwaves, you see. It's a heartbreak, soul-shaped radio attack. Taking 4 steps forward and no steps back. We knew right where we'd be.
Welcome back for another segment on this week's ODPH, and we are going to be breaking down everything UFC 229.
The madness that was 229.
What should have been the UFC's greatest night, just a big asterisk and shadow is looming over it.
Oh, huge. And it was a big disappointment all the way around.
Yeah, because, the fights were great. Michelle Watterson, won via decision over Felice Herrig. Derek Lewis KO'd Alexander Volkov with 15 seconds left in the third round.
That was wild. That was insane because, obviously they showed the corner, and, the corner's like, you got to win this fight. And then all of a sudden, the last minute, he just turned it on.
Yeah, it's something about Derek Lewis when he gets in those fights, and we'll talk a little bit later because he has some more news coming out after this card.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, out of nowhere, which, like I said, we're going to get very lengthy about the UFC. We're going to be breaking this down in 2 segments. But with Derek Lewis, he's one of those polarizing fighters that he finds ways to win when you don't think he's going to. And with that kind of, underdog mentality, he is just becoming a rising star in the UFC ranks.
Obviously the charisma was shown afterwards with his interview with Rogan there.
Yeah,
so.
You can go find that on YouTube all over the place. Trust
Look it
us,
up.
folks. Reyes, he won by decision over OSP. Tony Ferguson versus Anthony Showtime Pettis.
Oh, man. That was hard to watch. It was tough.
That is brutal. It is everything you wanted from a fight, and you hate to see it end on an injury.
Yeah, obviously with the way that UFC shows the corners there when they were talking to him about, with the broken hand, it's like at the end of the day, if you can't defend yourself, you got to make the right decision for yourself. And Ferguson was pummeling him at that point, so it was probably the right call.
Yeah, it was the call. Duke Rufus and his camp said, we were really just worried about protecting our fighter because you can kind of see it going one of 2 ways. I know that if you want to stay in the fight, you see fighters like Uriah Faber who decided to stay in there against Mike Brown with 2 broken hands.
Which was crazy.
Yeah, which is insane because he broke him in the first rounds, if I'm not mistaken. And then he's just throwing elbows, which, what is more reasonable? To show the heart of a fighter and stay in there, or think about long-term instead of just getting more damage when you can't fully defend yourself?
Well, I think in that Faber fight, too, he outreached the guy that he was fighting, not to mention that he had the ability to hit them with those elbows, and he wasn't taking a ton of punches on. In this Pettis-Ferguson fight, Ferguson was laying them in there. So he really couldn't protect himself at that point.
Yeah, it's just one of those questions that it's like with Ferguson, you don't want to take any chances. I mean, he was definitely wanting to make a statement about he is the undisputed lightweight champion, because obviously we deal with interim belts quite often, so it gets a little messy with that. But Ferguson has definitely made his case and his statement for that, so you can't go wrong about that. And whatever's going to happen from here on out is going to be interesting with him. But then let's get to the main event. Conor McGregor coming back after, what, a 2-year layoff?
Yeah, and, boxing training and promotion and
the whole
craziness.
Khabib coming in off, the craziness that happened in April. Obviously he beat Alex Quinta, and he was ready to go. This had a lot of emotion behind it. The backstory about the bus incident and everything that happened after, and there's been a lot of trash talk by Conor for the most part. This one, like we said, was going to go a couple different ways on last week's show. Conor had to finish him in the first round. Otherwise, if he got taken to deep water, it could be a little trouble, and just the gas tank was going to be the biggest question in the later rounds. Conor did not knock him out in the first round.
No, he did not.
Khabib stuck to his game plan, and his grappling is unparalleled.
So this was the first time I had seen Khabib fight, and my God, when he gets you to the ground, he is a leech. You're not getting him off of you. No. Period. And so my wife and I got the fight. We're big McGregor fans. Being last name of Duffy, so here cheer Irish. So we had our Irish flags going and everything. We were ready for this fight. And the first round, I thought Conor. I mean, if we break this down round by round here, real quick, I thought the first round, I thought Conor held his own. Obviously, Khabib did get him to the ground and did not necessarily a ton of work for, letting him go to the ground and everything. I felt like he kind of was laying on him a little bit. He was landing those blows that might add up over time, but, it wasn't a ton of work. Conor was landing some reverse, some punches while he was on his back and was able to, get up to his butt in an upright position up against the cage. And, eventually the round ended. Second round was all Khabib.
Yeah.
All Khabib.
This is just something, his grappling, when he gets you down, it's tough. We have not seen anybody out-grapple him.
I was very worried that the fight was going to get stopped at about 2 minutes when he was in that upright position and he was just landing those shots to Conor's face. Mm-hmm. But to Conor's, tip of the cap there, he took him.
He hung in there. There's no question. He definitely hung in that fight.
Yeah.
And he was still trying to win. Third round, he was kind of landing some shots.
Third round that would have been, I mean, if I was judging, I would have probably given it to him just because of the shots that he was landing, and he did have 2 takedown blocks.
Yes.
So that was huge, I think, for a confidence standpoint. And then the fourth round.
Khabib just took over. And the one thing, if we're now seeing a weakness in Conor's game,
we are.
Anytime he gets into a submission type area where he has to defend a fighter from his back.
Yeah.
He struggles.
I mean, Khabib got to his back midway through the second. I was like, oh, this is bad. Because in my head, I'm thinking Diaz fight. Oh my God, Conor, get him off your back.
Yeah.
And then when he got it in the fourth round, I was like, and especially the way that he was positioned, I knew right there. I was like, this is not a good position to be in with Khabib, because he had him tied up, like an octopus has his prey wrapped up, man. He was not moving.
No, he was not moving, and then Khabib just had to make everything fall into place. He wanted to make a statement. He wanted to make him submit, and he did. Then this is where things went just off the rails.
Just went terribly wrong.
Which the minute Khabib got up, words were exchanged. And if you've been following this like we have, there's been bad blood between the camps ever since April, when that whole crazy bus crap.
Well, it happened before that, even at the hotel with the confrontation of one of Conor's teammates.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, because that's where it stemmed. Just when their camps met, words are exchanged. And we get that. When you're fighting, emotions run high.
Yeah, there's animosity, there's jealousy, there's anger, there's everything.
And we haven't seen this side of Khabib to record. He's usually been just very calm, very focused. You don't really see a ton of emotion. You're not going to see, the charismatic post-fight interviews like you would from Conor with him. he's always just been very focused on, the fight at hand.
Stoic.
Yeah. And then the minute he got that submission, he just let it out. And he said something, and obviously somebody we're assuming from Conor's camp, said something to him that triggered him to jump out of the cage and go basically Finn Balor stomp from the platform where you walk on the cage to the floor to engage in a fight. Albeit, though, in the cage, Conor, getting to his senses, from what it appeared to me, in my opinion, got up and was on the top of the cage, and it looked like he started fighting somebody up there.
Yeah, when we were watching it live, I didn't think that Conor really, when he jumped up there, obviously now more video has been released, but it looked like he was just jumping up there trying to direct traffic, try and get team, trying to point to his team members to do this. Obviously, more videos come out that have since shown that he, might have escalated things a little bit. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the guy from Khabib's camp who jumped in the octagon.
Yeah, you saw more fighters come in and then somebody sucker punch Conor from behind.
Yeah, it's just not necessary regardless of what's going on.
Yeah, it just turned in from what should have been Khabib's greatest professional night to date of getting crowned the belt. And I heard some nonsense they weren't going to give him the belt because the fans were going to riot. No, here's the deal. He won the belt you needed to put on him. And if people were going to throw stuff, I mean, stop. People would have been mad if Conor lost, but did you watch when he lost to Diaz? I don't exactly remember a riot breaking out after that happened.
So when we were watching it and, they were given, because I first off, kudos to the UFC and their coverage of this, because they probably do the best job, bar none, of showing the extra action, almost the fifth wall, if you will, the fourth wall of showing the inside stuff, with the corner stuff and then, the post-fight. So you were able to hear Dana, kind of explain why he didn't want to put the belt on him. And I mean, I almost kind of agreed with it. And I mean, I might be a little partisan because I am a Conor guy, but at the end of the day, I almost understand because he was worried about the safety of everybody else, not just the safety of Khabib. He was worried about himself. He was worried about the referees, the officials, the security that were in the ring, because at the end of the day, who knows what these people could have thrown that could have injured somebody.
Well, maybe. But, I guess I just look at it as if he didn't jump out of the cage, they should have just done it and been fine. But the fact that he did, and then then it's like, okay, are you trying to remain order? Because he's not the first person that's jumped out of the cage.
Sure.
Granted, he's the first one that, to my knowledge, has started a fight outside of the cage or engaged physically with somebody, should we say. To that extent, it's like, I just struggle with it, just a sense of just like, okay, he won, and granted, this is so much emotion, and then if something did get said, which we're reading a lot of different reports, that somebody said something from Conor's camp to him that was enough to make him jump.
That was the trigger, yeah.
That was enough to set it off. Either way, if you're trying to remain order and calm it down, finish it off, okay. But then it's like after the fight breaks out, you're having this just reminded me so much of the Malice at the Palace from the NBA a few years ago.
Well, to me, it was like they just didn't know what to do. It was just so unexpected because now you can't forget that these guys are all very dangerous with their hands.
Oh, yeah. So
at the end of the day, you got Las Vegas security guards that have no idea how to stop these guys without having to use force. Mm-hmm. Basketball players running up in the stands, security guards obviously can tie them up. You're not going to tie up Khabib. He's going to get, not only is he going to get out of it, he's probably going to break your nose doing it.
And if I'm the UFC, I am thankful that this did not escalate worse with fans trying to rush the cage.
Right.
Or trying to get involved. Because they could have easily. I mean, if you really want to break it down, Conor has such a big following, and so does Khabib too.
Yeah.
That this could have just got extremely ugly with the fans trying to rush the cage. And then they wouldn't have been able to stop. I mean, all the security at the T-Mobile wouldn't have been able to stop them.
I mean, at the end of the day, and plus, and back to your point, though, about putting the belt on him, I mean, I agree that they probably, what they could have done was done it in the press conference.
Yeah, done it
because he should have had his moment. At the end of the day, this was his biggest win to date over one of the top opponents that he's ever fought. So he should have had his shine. Did he, jump out of the cage and attack people? I mean, yeah, he did. But at the end of the day, he still won the match. Mm-hmm. So I still think that you need to at least honor that. Obviously, there is some serious punishment, though, coming down from the Las Vegas board, which is serious, especially the fact that you fight there often, and that is your headlining building you go to.
The Nevada State Athletic Commission is definitely going to has to come down about this. There's no question. What I think they should do is you have to fine them, both. You have to have I don't want to say just a crazy fine, but you need to have something that this sets precedent that this kind of crap can't happen.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can't have this happening at your shows, because if you want to be taken as a serious professional sport, and this is a serious professional sport, let's not get it twisted. Boxing is a serious professional sport. MMA is a serious professional sport. But if you want to have the same legitimacy as baseball, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, whatever, you need to go by the rules that are applied. You can't sit there and have brawls after the fight. Let's take this back to something that, I mean, granted, I watch, I think, more UFC than anybody of the panel. Do you remember when Paul Daly sucker punched Josh Koscheck after a fight?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been banned from the UFC for life.
Right.
He can't come back as of right now. So, in taking that in perspective, how do you justify the action that should come down here?
Well, I mean, I'll say to that point, Conor can't fight in New York right now until that gets cleared up. So, I mean, do you ban Khabib from Nevada?
I think you have to look at the perspective of what happened, but still it's an emotional thing after a fight. Same thing you can say with Daly. What I think should happen is he should be fined, and I think they both should be fined. If you want to suspend him from fighting in Nevada, you can.
I think, to me, a fine is not going to do justice, though, because at the end of the day, it's just money to these guys, and they got enough between endorsements and everything else. I mean, you take their purse. Like Conor said, it wasn't about the money anymore. He has enough from fighting Mayweather.
Right.
He's not worried about that.
Well, but I think for him, he still is just from a pride standpoint. That I think that if you're going to say that your legacy is now stained and you're going to start losing some endorsements because of this, that's where it comes into play.
Yeah, but even that might hurt Khabib. I don't think Conor cares.
Conor might. I think he deep down he might, because the question is, okay, what do you fine him? And if you ban him from fighting, in Nevada, he can't box in Nevada. There was always talk that he was going to have a rematch with Mayweather or whatever the nonsense was going to be there.
Right.
Well, if you can't fight there, where are you going to stage the fight?
Well, I mean,
that's where the argument becomes.
Right. Well, the president is in New York, obviously, because they've already said that he can't fight there right now.
Yeah.
Then you go back to Tyson when he bit Holyfield's ear off.
Yeah.
He got stripped of his license to fight in Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying you need to go that far, but I mean, I think that there needs to be some sort of thing where now you cause an inconvenience to Dana White in the UFC right now for not only letting that incident escalate to the point that you did, but then it happened the way that it happened. Because at the end of the day, the security is still based off of them and the UFC. So I think that you have to then do, because I'm the old school, going back to my coaching days.
Yeah.
You punish one, you punish all.
So
you don't just make one person run, you make the entire team run. So for this, I would say you got to start with a punishment with Dana, and then you got to go from there. And the biggest punishment is taking that champion, Khabib, and his biggest draw in Conor, and saying, right now you can't fight in the state of Nevada for 6 months to a year.
But would the UFC be willing to do that? I agree with you. I fully do. But I guess I look at this and go, with Conor and what he did, he was still allowed to fight.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's true.
I mean, this is where the precedence needs to be set. I don't exactly know what is the right or wrong answer. I think, for me, it's, okay, you fine them, and then you can kind of just look at, okay, what was the extent of the actions after? Was there any serious ramifications? No, just the UFC just had a very, very ugly moment that, can they bounce back from? Yeah, I think so. Will this hurt them down the road? Possibly, because they're going to be making the move from Fox to ESPN. Will fans follow this if they're seeing this? Because some people might get turned off by this. That this is just be like, okay, this is your biggest fight of the year, and your two major stars can't keep their emotions in check.
Well, then it goes back to the Tyson Holyfield thing too. I mean, look how much that turned off boxing fans after that happened. I mean, boxing took a huge hit after that fight because people at the end of the day were like, this is not what we want to be seeing.
Yeah, and I think for the UFC, this is something they can't really afford to do, because if Conor does get suspended, Conor currently is their biggest star. Let's not get it twisted.
I mean, right now he's pretty much their only media presence star.
Yeah, but the one that draws the biggest buy rates.
Right, and that's what I mean by media presence. He's the only one that people are going to know that he's going to put the butts in the seats.
Yeah, so if he's suspended, you have John Jones coming back. Brock Lesnar is in limbo right now.
Yeah, whatever's going on there.
Which, like I said, we're going to get to that next segment. Ronda Rousey, gone. She's doing WWE. Who else is the next big name there? I mean, for hardcore fans, yeah, we can rattle them off. I can.
Yeah,
but
from a charisma standpoint, you're right.
But for if you're trying to tell a bunch of people that just watch Conor McGregor, hey, you need to check out this fight, and you start naming fighters, they might not know who they are. And can the UFC have that low buy rates and just not the big media presence, so to speak, from the mainstream fans if they lose their biggest star? This is the question that is just kind of puzzling to watch.
Well, I mean, I can say right now that if it wasn't Conor fighting this fight, I wouldn't have bought this fight.
Right, and I think that is prime example.
Right.
Because if you don't have your major stars on fighting, this is where people turn off. And then they start focusing on something else.
And just goes to show what next month is now.
Yeah. This is just wild to see. And how they're going to come out about this. I mean, as we're recording, we haven't heard any official words yet. This just everybody's investigating the incident, looking at all the different angles. And you're seeing a lot of different footage hit the internet. You're seeing different angles of the fighters involved and what really comes about it. I think for me, like I said, you find them. You have to weigh the actions down. You should be doing some kind of suspension. I think that has to come with it too. I don't know to the extent, because now you have the state athletic commissions involved. They have to set the precedent, because if you let this slide for whatever reason, this now is a example if this should ever happen again. I hope not, because this is such a bad look for the UFC and MMA in general, that if you want to be on pay-per-view, if you want to be on national television, can you imagine if this was on a Fox card? Let's just throw this out there.
Oh, imagine if this was on a Disney-owned ESPN card.
Exactly. Can you imagine the reaction this would have got? And if you're on ESPN, can you throw this on primetime? Because what if you put this on ABC?
Yeah, what if this is like some sort of Saturday night special where you have a featured card?
Yeah, and then this happened on national television? The ramifications of this are huge. And how the UFC and the state athletic commissions handle this, they need to set that precedent. They can't just go, well, this was an accident, it's a one-time thing. Because now, if they let this slide, for whatever reason, this just opens the door for possible future incidents to happen. And if some other fighter does something worse, like let's say the fans got involved and somebody was hitting them, God forbid.
Right.
Where does this go from here? That's going to be the question moving forward. We're going to take a quick break because we did have some fan commentary that we want to definitely bring into play here. You are listening to the ODPH.
Hey, this is the King of Lyle, Luke Visengard, Gladius 205 champion, and you're listening to the ODPH.
Coming back for another segment on this week's ODPH, and we are still breaking down the melee that happened after UFC 229. And like we said, we did have some fan interaction hitting us up on the social media, hashtag ODPH. Our good friend George Gatton from Austin, Texas, chimed in and was saying, this is a work. This is WWE style 101. He's not wrong.
I mean, the promotion up to it definitely looked like better heat than what WWE can get right now.
Yeah, and this was something, too, immediately after it, Conor was asking for a rematch. That you almost wonder if this is all staged. I hope not, because if this is staged and this was, like, really planned out, who said this is a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, especially because the state commission is obviously a lot different for how they regulate UFC, which is dubbed a sport, versus entertainment, which is WWE. So, yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be very smart on their part if it is a work.
Mike Pompetti chimed in from Massachusetts, and he was kind of echoing the same thing. He's like, Khabib is just in a league of his own. He's just a total savage that is just gets in the cage and just tears it up. You can't walk into a fight after 2 years off and think that you're going to run away with it. He's not wrong.
No, not at all. I mean, I definitely think that what I would like to see is Khabib fight somebody maybe with some more jiu-jitsu skills that can fight on his back, because that would be a pretty equal fight. You talk about Khabib's ground game, and then with a jiu-jitsu guy who, welcomes you to take him to the ground. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Retro Matt, our buddy who chimes in on the entertainment edition, was saying everybody freaking out makes no sense to me. This does make the sport look bad, essentially, but it still was entertainment. That's what they were pushing.
I mean, they had almost $3 million in buys?
Yeah.
Something like that? I mean, yeah, it was entertaining.
It works. Kevin Molson chimed in, too. It's a disgrace to the sport and it has no place in it in MMA. It sets MMA back for sure if it was for real. If this was just a work, just change your name to the WWE and move on. I can't fault him on that.
I mean, it's just, it absolutely is a black eye. And at the end of the day, when you have probably your premier fighters on a card, you want to have it go off without a hitch. And there was a hitch.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, just at the end of the day, it's just like this was just such a bad look for the UFC and MMA in general. That it goes to show that, like, even if your emotions are that wound up, somebody's just got to somehow reel them back in and be professional, because if you want to be a professional fighter, you need to do this.
Well, and you brought up Malice at the Palace, and I mean, you talk about how much that affected and hurt the NBA for the remainder of that season going into next year. I mean, and that was one incident that had never happened before in a sport where there isn't a ton of violence. This is a sport that has violence.
Yeah. And
you talk about how offended people are just by this incident. I mean, that's pretty telling.
Yeah, because this is just one thing that, like I said, the more, I don't want to say credibility because I don't think that's the right word, but for how the UFC has been trying to become mainstream.
Right, yeah, there you go.
And become a real professional sport to the eyes of people that still think it's back in its early days of just extreme cage fighting.
Where it wasn't even allowed on pay-per-view.
Right. To see where it's now been regulated and it's now in every state in the U.S. and then it's also, it's an international sport. They do travels into different countries. To see this and just how this evolves is mind-blowing to me, that just fighters would just lose it like this and just look at the stain that's talking. We're not even talking about the great performance Khabib had. He had one of the best performances he's ever had in the cage. And he's been undefeated for how long? Nobody's even talking about that.
Well, let me bounce something off of you real quick.
Sure.
So if you're going into negotiations and you're Disney and you're ESPN, you're representing them, and obviously they signed UFC to a pretty substantial amount of money to get their programming.
Mm-hmm.
Are you now second-guessing yourself if you're ESPN and Disney?
Yes, I am. Because for what I want this representing my brand, as unfortunate as it is, see, I have to remove myself from being a fan, and I have to look at this, that I'm now investing in this, where I'm now watching fighters jump into the crowd. And now what should have just been something that was held in a cage, just exploded out into the floor. What could have happened? Do I think that this might happen again? Now, this is where, if I'm Disney, I'm having a very long conversation with the UFC and saying, if this happens again, this is our buyout, and we're done. And then if they lose that, and they're off national television, or ESPN, or the cable television rather, where do they go from here? See, this is where this gets tricky, and this is why we're really digging into this incident. It's not so much that it was entertainment, and it could have been a staged fight, sure, but at the same time, this just really casts a shadow on everything that is good about MMA. MMA has always really stood out for being just a test on multiple levels of combat sports. I always refer to it as, it's almost like human chess to a degree, because you have to figure out ways to defeat your opponent, whether it's on the ground, whether it's standing up, submission, jiu-jitsu, wrestling. There's so much involved with it. To see this just get set back, because what's the biggest story from this weekend? Oh yeah, Conor and Khabib were fighting after the fight. Somebody jumped in the crowd. Nobody's saying, did you really see that great performance Khabib did? Look at his grappling skill. And look what he did to Conor. And now, I mean, moving forward, it's like when they come back, whenever they come back, because granted, they're not done fighting.
No, this is going to be happening again.
This will be happening again. Would you book the rematch? I wouldn't. I'll already tell you right now I wouldn't.
I mean, I would. You have to.
No, for me, no. This is how I would break this down. If I am the UFC and I want to move forward with this, Khabib fights Tony Ferguson. I take the risk that this gets canceled for a 5th time. Because if you don't know their history, they should have fought already 4 times. But something weird happens that somebody gets injured or somebody can't do the fight.
Well, Ferguson gets hurt every time he pretty much has a big fight like this, right?
They just have this string of bad luck. But just whenever this fight is made between those 2 guys.
Well, his fight with Conor got delayed too because he got hurt, right?
Ferguson? No, Ferguson was never booked to fight Conor.
Okay.
No, Ferguson's always been booked to fight Khabib.
Oh, okay.
It just, something happens. I mean, he got hurt the week of the fight. Like, I forget, it was like walking around, he tripped over a cable wire or something really crazy like that.
Yeah.
It's just something happens that this fight is cursed. But if I'm the UFC, I got to make this fight. I got to roll the dice with this. I can't sit there and go, you know what, we got to give these guys an immediate rematch, especially after all the drama that went
down. Oh, I mean, I definitely don't say this needs to be right away. No way.
No, maybe in a fight or 2, sure. You got to kind of let everything cool down a bit, because the problem you're going to have is if you do an immediate rematch is to wherever they can get signed to fight, the problem you have is everybody's tempers is still running high. And everybody is going to be so wound up that everybody really needs to be on a best behavior clause or something in that variation, because if they ruin this, and like let's say, and I hope this doesn't happen, but like let's say there's another incident after the fight again where people are running in the cage or people are running outside the cage. Are you going to tell me that this is not going to set MMA back even further? That you can't have your main event guys be calm, cool, and composed and being able to be professionals because you want to be a professional sport? I mean, this is just you just kind of need to let tempers cool for a bit. They're going to simmer up again no matter what when you start booking these 2 in a fight again. But for right now, I'd cool it down and I'd get back to basics. All right, Khabib, you fight Ferguson. Conor, you get your match with Nate Diaz.
No, that was gonna be my next question: is where you go with Conor next?
You put him against Diaz. You let him go. They can fight at whatever weight class they want to fight at. I don't care.
So here's my thing with that though: is are you worried about your star, your brand, basically getting 2 now? Well, that would be 3 losses, even though 1 was a boxing match, but 3 losses in a 3-year span.
You know what? I don't think it matters. I think he's one of those dudes that is just so charismatic that you don't watch for the wins and losses. You just watch to see what he's going to do.
Yeah, but I mean, also to that though, I mean, then so let's say he does lose to Diaz if it gets booked that way, you don't go Khabib again.
No, you don't. No, you stack him up against somebody else.
Yeah, but I mean that now hurts the Khabib thing because now. What if you're looking 2-3 years down the line? Now you're not looking at that same cash that you would have had before.
Right, but at the same token, though, if you're supposed to be the guy at that division, if you're supposed to be the champion, you should be able to fight and win at all times. If you don't, that's the risk you take.
Right, but if you're fighting Diaz at a different weight class, it's kind of, that's a little bit different.
Well, no, I agree because, they fought at 170 the last time.
Which was not the right weight class for Conor.
No, by no means, but you have to figure out a weight class that you do it and that works for both, and then you just kind of treat it as a side fight. I think if Conor fought somebody at 155, and if he does fight Diaz at 155 and he loses, well, then he goes down the road again. He has to work his way back up. You take that risk, but he's going to generate a strong following, and he's going to have people that really want to get involved.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, if he loses 2 in a row, I mean, his fan base is still going to be there. It's the people that hate him that pay to see the fight that I think would be the ones that you lose. Because now with 2 losses or 3 losses potentially, those people aren't going to be like, Conor he ain't nothing now. It's
going to be one of those interesting factors that, as you go into it, you really just got to kind of toy around with. But I think you definitely put him against a marquee name. The Diaz trilogy would be pay-per-view money. that you could do, and you know that those two will be able, no matter what animosity they have, they're not going to have these kind of antics.
And you can really headline a show with that.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. And then with Khabib, you either put him against Ferguson. That's the fight that makes sense to me, or put him against Dustin Poirier, who I thought he should have been fighting for all this time.
Even Conor Diaz would maybe even be a good introduction to the ESPN.
Yeah, I'd be all right with that.
As a free fight.
I wouldn't struggle with that because I think the UFC does need to make a splash when they come to ESPN, and I think they need to make it up to the fans and to the mainstream fans that want to get them back involved.
Well, it'd be the same thing as they did with Chuck and Rampage when they did the free fight on Spike for UFC 150 or whatever it was, the anniversary show that they did on Spike for the free fight for the belt.
Yeah, I mean, if they did something involved, you could definitely make it happen, but it's just going to be a matter of what's the right matchup to do.
Right, and there's plenty of them to do.
Yeah, because, there's been so much juggling around that we haven't even gotten into the other news, which we'll have to get in bullet points here, which Nate Diaz is not fighting Dustin Poirier. Poirier had to pull out to injury at UFC 230, albeit they've juggled around the women's flyweight title. That's been rescheduled later in this year. You got Derek Lewis now headlining with Daniel Cormier for the heavyweight title.
Out of nowhere,
which now, okay, what's going to happen with Brock Lesnar? Brock's not going to be good till the beginning of 2019 anyway. I'm still predicting he's going to fight at Super Bowl weekend, whenever that card is, for the UFC.
Yeah, I would definitely probably feel good if you're a WWE fan that he'll probably make an appearance at the Royal Rumble, and then from there probably get ready for any sort of UFC card.
Yeah, which, Lewis Cormier, it's a good fight, but we'll get into that a little later down in some episodes when it gets closer. And then the big news breaking as we are recording, John Jones has now been officially scheduled to fight Alexander Gustafsson at the end of the year, UFC 232, I believe it's December 29th. So it's going to be, I believe, for the light heavyweight title. I am trying to get official confirmation, but I have not as of we are recording, but we'll be posting that on our social media when that happens. That's a big fight you got to make.
You talk about the New Year's card. It's always a big deal for UFC going into the new year that they always do something big to end the year. So what bigger than this?
Folks, that is a lot of UFC MMA talk that we've done, but we want to hear from you. So hashtag it up, ODPH. We want to know, what's your thoughts on the whole Khabib Conor melee? Thoughts moving forward? What should be done about it? What to be done to prevent it? We want to know. Hit us up on that social media. Talk to us because we want to talk to you about it. You are listening to the ODPH.
Hey, this is Rob Kacharik from the band 607, Autopilot Off, and Walking Distance, and you're listening to ODPH.
Coming back for the local minute on this week's ODPH, and it's hockey season. The Binghamton Devils are back in action. Winners Saturday night on the home opener, 7-5 against the Toronto Marlies. Nathan Bastian had 2 goals, and I dare I say it was a wild night down at the arena. But the B-Devils are looking good coming out the gate. They're playing tonight as we're recording against Hartford, and they're going to Level to take on the Rockets Friday and Saturday, the 12th and 13th of October, and before they come back on October 17th, Belleville, the old Senators franchise. Definitely get down to the arena if you can. BinghamtonDevils.com for more information. So shout out to those Devils, and shout out to those Binghamton Bulldogs. As always, the season is quickly approaching. Time to round those bases before we give you those locks and leaps. Coach, what you got?
Well, Ken, we've been talking about a lot of beef tonight, and none more spicy than what's coming out of Minnesota right now with Jimmy Butler and the rest of those Timberwolves.
That situation's getting crazy right before the season kicks off next week.
Jimmy Butler reported to practice today for the first time in all of training camp / preseason and called out everyone in the Timberwolves organization, from the guy selling popcorn all the way up to Scott Layden in the general manager's position.
That's wild.
Craziness. Not to mention the fact that he was calling out KAT in the middle of practice, telling him that he can't score on him, he can't get buckets on him. This is only going to get worse, especially when you hear about the fact that they had a trade in place with Miami to the point where they sent Jimmy Butler's medical information to him only to back out of it at the last minute. This is only going to get worse as the season goes along.
This is one of the situations they have to move him, and they got to move him quickly.
I mean, you got to do it before the season starts. You don't have a choice at this point.
Yeah, this is one he's forcing the hand of the organization, and they got to send him somewhere.
This reminds me of the Stephon Marbury situation with the Knicks when there was all that animosity and he was riding at the end of the bench. that this is the point where it is and it's not even just on Jimmy Butler, it's on the organization and him as both parties are just as guilty as the other.
Everybody's involved in this, and everybody's responsible for how this has escalated.
And it could have been something that should have been solved so quickly, and I understand that he's a premier player, so if you package him up and trade him somewhere, you want to get something in return, but at the end of the day, your team and having chemistry is just as important as winning games.
Yeah, this is just something moving forward that they got to fix, and they got fixed quick. I don't think he's going to go to Boston, even though we did hear some news about the Celtics that Kyrie Irving has claimed that he wants to stay.
That probably broke your heart, didn't it?
I think it's a smokescreen. Maybe it's all the Conor Khabib talk about being a work. I'm seeing this being a work. Like, he's just going to ultimately just go, nah, I'm leaving for New York. See you guys.
Yeah, well, he feels stupid for doing it, apparently, is what he said.
Stay tuned for that one. I'm using my unofficial ODPH prediction on this, that he still winds up coming to the Knicks. I am not giving up hope. I think he's pulling like a Nick Saban when he kept saying he wasn't leaving, go to Alabama.
Oh, right, and then the middle of the night?
Middle of the night, he's first playing out.
Sorry, Miami.
Yeah, I fully sense that's going to happen, and we'll see. But maybe it's just my bitterness for my round in the base subject, because my beloved New York Yankees decided to slump at the worst possible time. I have to say congratulations to the Boston Red Sox. As much as this pains me to say, but their pitching showed up at the right time. The 16-1 beatdown after Aaron Judge was rocking New York at Fenway. You kind of knew there was going to be something, and just everything just fell apart for the Yanks. Still a good season, but you know what? You got to give respect due to Boston. They showed up when they needed to, albeit, though, Giancarlo Stanton's ninth inning strikeout really killed the rally that was going on in the Bronx last night. And moving forward, let's go National League.
Playing like a true New York team right now, because about all of them are duds.
Yeah, this isn't good. This is not good. But like I said, I'm rooting for anybody from the National League right now, in my unofficial opinion. But I got to give credit where it's due. Boston showed up and they did what they needed to.
That's the honorable thing.
Yeah. You can't say I'm not honorable.
It's painful to say, I know.
I'm bitter and I'm angry. But when Kyrie comes to the Knicks next season, I'll be even better.
Take it back from Boston.
So let's get into those locks and leaps, shall we? Because now I'm getting all fired up. Pad could not be here, but he definitely shot his in. He has taken Minnesota 10.5 over Arizona. And he has taken those Cowboys as his leap against Jacksonville. Love the roll the dice here, because he's going out on a limb. I would not be touching Dallas if I was him.
I would not be touching Dallas either at all.
Yeah, this is a wild pick, but you know what? I got to give a shout out to the young Padawan. He is taking a shot here. Coach, what do you got for yours?
All right, so I have the Bears.
Okay.
As my lock. We got 3-point favorites going into Miami. I think they're going to win that outright. Not only cover, they're going to cover times 2.
Okay.
Miami's down on their luck right now, and I like Chicago's defense so much as the number 1 fantasy scoring defense in all of fantasy football.
It's crazy.
Oh, man, I love it.
It's crazy.
I picked them back up today, too. I was stoked. And then as my leap, I've got what we talked about earlier. I'm riding the train.
Oh, boy.
Here we go. Baker Mayfield. All that charisma.
Let it ride, buddy.
Leave it to the leap, baby. I got them. They are 1-point dogs to the Chargers coming in from the West Coast. Another 1 o'clock game for a West Coast team traveling to the East. I love it. Give it to me.
That spread is so crazy because, I mean, Cleveland has been good. But 1-point dogs? It's insane.
Especially for a West Coast team traveling out east, especially for Vegas to know the fact that West Coast teams traveling east at 1 o'clock starts have a history of terrible performances. Leap it up.
Man, I'm interested to see that. All right, so my lock, I'm riding with Pat on this one. I'm taking Minnesota over Arizona. Big.
That's a big spread, too.
Big. I'm taking it. I think Arizona is going to struggle. And I think Cousins is going to get those boys wound up, because I think that big win against Philly is only going to get them more fired up. And let's hope they do, because Minnesota needs this win too.
I mean, it's do or die for them right now.
They can't have another trap game. But I'm glad they did against Buffalo, though. Shout out to them. And my leap, you know what? We talk about drama on this show. And maybe this could be the official title of this week's episode. I am taking the Steelers as the dog against the Bengals.
Oh.
What kind of bizarre world are we living in?
That's a big game to pick.
I know, but for some reason, Le'Veon Bell is claiming he's going to be back with them next week. Maybe. We'll see. And obviously there's been a lot of drama in the news about the Steelers, but I still think it's the Steelers, and I think the Bengals have been playing great.
The Bengals have been playing very good.
But, it's something about those division games that you just got to go, all right, guys, let's see what you got. And for the Steelers, they need this win.
I mean, the Steelers' defense has not looked very good, and Cincinnati's offense has looked very good.
I'm telling you what, this is going to be a high-scoring game. My unofficial ODPH fantasy football pick, if you have Ben Roethlisberger or Andy Dalton, line them up because they're going to be having a shootout there. It's going to be fun to watch.
Just as long as he still gives the ball to Connor.
We can see what happens there. Because I think I'm facing somebody again that has him on their team this week. So
I don't think it's not me, luckily.
Yeah, we'll see, though. But that's all we got for this week. So for Coach Duffy,
good night.
I'm your host, Ken M. Thank you, as always, for listening to the ODPH. We'll see you next time.